We have today with us another young Indian as part of the Voice of the Young segment. Hello, everyone. Today we have with us Sukanya Nambiar. Over to Sukanya. Let's hear from you.
Right. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, first of all, for having me on the show. In fact, I actually went through some of the Vidpeds that you uploaded on YouTube, and I also saw some LinkedIn posts. And that actually got me, very interested. And I actually went through some of them as well. It was really good to see so many people in the same field as I am in, who are, just as passionate about economics, the development sector, impact consulting. So it was very good to see all of them in this on this one platform, and for you to sort of give this opportunity to a lot of young people. I think it's a very sort of important message that goes out to a lot of young people who are probably still pursuing their degree or still trying to figure out what they wish to do in their career. So I would definitely like to thank you for your initiative and also for having me today.
Okay.
So, sir, in terms of the thing that I would like to talk about, I would firstly just like to, talk a bit about my own college experience, how my 3 years as an economics student sort of shaped me into who I am right now, and all the choices that I've taken since then. Would just like to talk a bit about my own background. Then I'd like to talk about a bit about my work experience as an impact consultant, some of the learnings that I've had over the past 3 or so years in the sector. And then I'll move on to some of the future plans that I have based on whatever I've done so far and what I think where I see myself going now. I'd like to talk a bit about that.
Okay.
So, sir, firstly, a bit about my background. So I am born and brought up in Delhi. I have spent pretty much my entire life here. It just so happens that right after school, I went to college, which was in Delhi University. I went to St. Stephen's College for my undergrad in economics in 2017. I passed out in 2020, and then I had a brief stint in Chandigarh. I was in the city of Chandigarh working with the government of Haryana. I was in fact there on the ground working during the pandemic in the government office. So for about a year or so, I was there in Chandigarh, and then I came back to Delhi, joined Deloitte, specifically their social impact practice in 2021, and since then have been working there. So somehow I feel like the city keeps me here. I mean, I've literally just found my roots here, and I mean, I am attached to the place. I feel like it has its own positives and negatives, but overall, I mean, it'll always be home for me. And I think the city has also sort of seen me evolve over the years. So yeah, that is about my sort of background, like a brief about my background. In terms of my experience in college, so economics was actually not something that a lot of people thought I would probably do, because both my parents are in the sciences. So my mother is a doctor; she's an oncologist, and my father is an engineer. And somehow there was, of course, this sort of expectation that okay, even she'll probably go for either engineering or medicine, maybe something more conventional. But I think from a very early age, I somehow felt that I was definitely very inspired by my mother, I would say, in terms of the work that she does as a doctor, both her clinical practice as well as a lot of the other initiatives that she's taken outside of work, which include running her own organization, conducting cancer support groups for her patients. I think a lot of that work is something that really inspired me to give back and do something which is truly meaningful. So I would definitely say that I haven't completely deviated in terms of maybe like a larger purpose that I have. But in terms of, I think, the line or the stream that I've taken on, of course, it's a bit different. And I was also very drawn to policy, to research in my high school. And I think, again, in school, the school that I went to also created that kind of environment which really encouraged a lot of debate and discussion. And I enjoyed being a part of that.
What school? Don't hesitate to name it. Let's hear it.
Yeah, so I went to Sardar Patel Vidyalaya in Delhi.
It's well known. It's well known.
Yeah, and so I think in school there was a lot of focus on firstly balancing your academics with your extracurriculars. I think what I've seen or what I've heard from a lot of my peers is that, especially in high school, a lot of schools completely switch gears, and they they want all of their students to only focus on marks, on tests, etc. I think, of course, at SPV, my school, there was, of course, I mean, it is known for its academic rigor, but then at the same time, there was also a lot of space to participate in a lot of extracurricular activities. There was also a lot of space for discussions, and trying to really explore different areas through, maybe say, competitions, or other sort of activities that happened intra school. So I think that really also gave me that sort of push to explore the field of humanities or research from a very early age. I remember that in school, in class 11, we had an internship where we were provided a lot of different options, and I chose economic research, and I got the opportunity to work with a professor from DU. And at the time, of course, I mean, I did not have a very thorough understanding of the subject, but even so, I think I was able to, understand that, okay, this is a subject which has a variety of applications. It is a subject where I see myself, sort of working in the future. And that sort of set the tone for where I sort of want to go post class 12. So in class 11, I took up humanities and math, which was not a very common combination, at least in school. So I took up, I had subjects like political science, history, and then I also had economics and math and English, of course. So I think this sort of provided a very multidisciplinary approach from a very sort of early age. I was about 16, 17 at the time. And I think that sort of also helped me hone my understanding of, different things from different perspectives. And that's where I think that sort of experience, again, just to sort of tell you about how I sort of reached at economics, I think that also sort of, gave me that kind of push to sort of explore economics more. And even within school, there were like, I think our economics teacher, I still remember her very fondly, because she was somebody who really pushed me to, take up projects outside of school, participate in competitions, be it business quizzing or, these entrepreneurship competitions. And I took part in all of them. And I could see a lot of these concepts that I studied in the classroom. So I started with the very basics of microeconomics, macroeconomics in class 12. And I could see all of those concepts coming together and me trying to apply them at my own level in school and really enjoying it. So that's when I decided that I want to go for economics post class 12. And I appeared for my board examination, and somehow Stephens happened. And I was very excited about starting off my college journey there. And in 2017, that's when I started. And I think those 3 years or so, I think I learned the most and I grew the most, I feel. I think college, in a lot of ways, there were a lot of things that I did not expect myself to do, which I sort of did in college. And there were also, I think, I would also like to call out that college wasn't like a very straight road for me in terms of experiences and my learnings. There were a lot of things that I had to learn and unlearn in the process. So once I started, for example, in my own, so firstly, to begin with, the academics. Of course, I mean, in college, there was a lot of rigor, there was a lot of competition. I think that there is this sort of expectation in college to, really give it your sort of best and put your best foot forward, and also always be on the top of your game. And of course, while also balancing a lot of other things that you have to take on. So I think in college, I was involved in extracurriculars, as well as, I mean, sort of balancing academics. And there were a lot of times when I had to prioritize and maybe, figure out that, okay, right now, maybe academics is what I want to focus on. Or, okay, right now, it's probably like, there are a lot of events happening, fests happening. Okay, let me shift my focus to extracurriculars. So there was a constant balancing act, which I sort of experienced during college. And at times, I do want to admit that it did get overwhelming. Of course, there were times when I pushed myself, stepped out of my comfort zone and learned a lot. But then there were also times when I would feel maybe a little inadequate in comparison to, say, my peers. or a bit inadequate in terms of, maybe I'm not doing enough. That sort of feeling.
Let's just get an example here of where you felt very comfortable and where you didn't feel so comfortable, because otherwise we don't know it in any way. So can you just give 2 examples? Sorry to interrupt, but it's worth it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Right. So I think one place where I felt where I did feel like I was sort of in my comfort zone and doing sort of well was when I was participating in a lot of these fests and club activities. So in college, we had a lot of these very active clubs, and I was a part of a couple of them. And there I felt like, firstly, I think it was in terms of my peer group there. I felt very well supported. I felt like I was around a lot of smart people and got a chance to learn from them. And at the same time, I was also able to contribute, say, in terms of, designing events, implementing events. And it gave me a lot of satisfaction in terms of, okay, I've built something from the scratch, or I've organized something from scratch. And you could see those outcomes when you would see, say, participants taking part in a quiz competition that you probably prepared the questions for, or if, say, you've prepared a case study for a competition, and you see the kind of response that you get from your participants. I think there were a lot of these small instances in college where I did feel like, I was sort of on top of things, or like doing well. Then on the flip side, there were also, so come second year, you have a lot of companies coming in for internships. And then in your final year, you also have the placement drive happening. And that is when I think, there were times when, maybe I did not convert, say, an offer, or maybe I, say, bombed an interview. And there were times when, you start questioning yourself in terms of, are you going down that path? Are you going down the right path? Do you have the right skill set to crack this? Maybe a lot of your other peers are doing much better than you in this respect, and you are sort of getting left behind. So I think that is one instance that I could think of where I sort of felt a little out of place. And I think this is something very recently. In fact, I met one of my juniors, and we were just discussing this, how, in college, each one of these, things that would happen, or each of these events would seem very personal at the time. It would seem like a very, as if you've been branded as somebody who maybe hasn't gotten, say, X internship or Y competition, you didn't win. And at the time, you end up taking that very seriously, right? So just in terms of maybe for whoever's listening, or I think there have also been times when I've interacted with some of my juniors at the workplace or otherwise, where sometimes people reach out on LinkedIn and they just want to figure out their next steps. And they share a lot of these things that have happened along the way. I think for one, firstly, I think these are things that are completely normal. I think these things should be normalized. It's never going to be a very linear path. Maybe in school, I think a lot of times you sort of assume that, okay, in school, I sort of had a smooth ride, and, I've been doing well. I've done a lot of different things. I've achieved a lot of different things. And then maybe you start hitting a roadblock here or a bump there. So it's natural at the time to maybe feel a little bummed about the situation, but it's always a very good idea to sort of take a step back and introspect. Firstly, where maybe your strengths lie. What are the things that you bring to the table? Secondly, I think it's also good to know that you're not alone in that process, on that journey. At the time, it could feel a bit isolating, but there are a lot of other people who are probably also on that same journey. So it's always a good idea to keep a support system close to you, and reach out to people who you look up to. Could be maybe a senior. I think in college, I found a lot of seniors who were very willing to help me out wherever possible, be it in terms of, say, a particular subject. Maybe how do I prepare for a particular subject, or say, how do I prepare for placements or internships? There are always people who are willing to, go out of their way to help you or mentor you. So always stay open to building those relationships. I feel, I think that can go a very long way in helping you build your own self, and also realizing that if you do hit a roadblock, it's completely fine. You should always try to figure out what next. And then I think throughout college, I sort of also focused on experimentation, and that's how I sort of figured out something like impact consulting. So in all honesty, when I was in college, I did not know much about management consulting as a field itself. Impact consulting was also, a complete, like, not something that I knew at all. it was only once I started again interacting with people and through my internships and through some of the competitions or projects that I took on, that is where I started understanding it a bit better. And I think I would definitely say that here again, I realized the need to expand your horizons and not stay fixated on one thing. Because I feel when I entered college, I had a very different goal or a very different outcome that I wanted out of it. That, okay, I will most likely go for my master's. I will most likely, go on to doing my master's and then maybe get into research. I think I was sort of fixated on that. But then once I started experiencing different things in college and taking on different, a lot of these different experiences, is when I realized that, okay, there are other things also which might sit with my strengths or which I can definitely give a shot to. So I think that is also something which is very important, just staying open to how things go and just
Okay.
learning as much as you can.
Yeah.
I think those are definitely two takeaways from my college experience that I would definitely like to highlight
Sure.
over here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Wonderful. Okay. And let's continue, please.
Yeah. So I think it was in my final year that I sort of figured that, okay, my interests do lie in the impact space. And there are certain, and even within economics, I think macro and dev eco, and even statistics, which I felt was a more application based subject. I think these were areas that I found particularly interesting. I really enjoyed as well. And I thought that, okay, I want to continue on this path and I want to see what are the different options available. Um, so so that is when I started doing my research on impact consulting as a field. And, within that, what are the different firms that are working? What are the different ways in which you can contribute as a fresher? Because at the time, I did feel that the thing is that in college, I did see a lot of people taking up jobs straight out of college. But my only sort of contention there was that what if, it doesn't pan out the way I thought it would, or maybe what if I don't like it, or maybe it's just not a fit for me. Then I'll be, what do I do then? But then I think once I started discussing, I think it was sort of a mix of both my own research and my own sort of experimentation, and also certain circumstances as well. So when I was in my final year, that is when COVID hit.
Yes.
I think it was March 2020, and I was still in my final year.
Yes.
And that's when I was sort of figuring out that, okay, should I go for my master's or should I go with a job? And that is the time when I thought that, okay, I think first of all, I need to really be certain of what is it that I want to do in terms of my academics. If I say go for a master's, there is a high chance that I might get, say, pigeonholed into one type of job or one type of discipline. And is it something that I want at this stage? Secondly, I also sort of weighed it against, how during the pandemic, most colleges had shut down by then and everything had gone online.
Yes.
So is it something, I mean, am I ready for an online master's or an online education? So at the time, I felt that it did not really seem like something that I wanted to do. So that was also a consideration.
Yeah.
But I think more than that, I think just by, sort of figuring out where my strengths lie, and through all of the research that I've done, I figured that, okay, impact consulting sort of lies at that intersection, at that sort of sweet spot where you bring in the private sector, you also interact with the government sector, and you're trying to work at, say, strategy. You're probably building strategy for, say, the government, or you're probably monitoring certain projects that, say, a philanthropic foundation is running. I think that way I would also get to learn a lot of different skills very early on, and then I can always figure out what I want to do.
Yeah.
So I think that was how I sort of set up like a whole decision matrix in a sense, in terms of what I want to do. I remember I literally created like a whole pros and cons list. Noted everything down. So I would definitely, I think that is a good sort of method to maybe decide as well. Of course, after considering everything and giving it all due thought.
Any role for what parents thought at that time, or this was all on you?
Actually, yeah. So at the time, I think my parents were a little concerned. In fact, for the first 2 years while I was working, they did have concerns in terms of, okay, you are working, but then what next? You
Yeah.
have to sort of, go for a master's.
Yeah.
What are your plans?
Yeah.
But then I think so that, in all honesty, it did take some amount of convincing, because I think it is tradition, right? Like if you have done a bachelor's, you should at least go for a master's within, say, 1.5 to 2 years,
Yeah.
if not sooner.
Yeah.
So it did take me some time to convince them. But
Yeah.
once I sort of started talking to them about the work that I'm doing, and the kind of, say, and at the level at which I'm working, I think that sort of helped them. That sort of did convince them, to an extent, that okay, maybe she will sort of figure out. I think here I would definitely like to also highlight the role that parental support has also played, because right from the time when I took up humanities in class 11, I think it would not have been possible if it weren't for supportive parents. And even now, when I have maybe taken decisions that may not seem very conventional, yes, there are times when we do. Of course, it's not like they've given me a complete free run to do whatever, but there have been times when I've sort of discussed it and tried to make them understand my viewpoint, and they have sort of come around to it. So
Okay.
I think that also has sort of played its part.
So you sat in, you had the college has placement and you took part in that, right? That's how you
I
got
did.
your first, yeah, that's how you got your first job?
I did. In fact, in college, I did not sit for every type of role, only very specific roles. But this particular opportunity, I actually came to know through LinkedIn at the time.
Okay. Okay.
Because I felt like this seemed like a better fit.
Yeah.
And at the time, I also had an opportunity from Warwick to pursue my master's in economics.
Yeah.
But like I just mentioned,
Yeah.
by then I decided to work, and that's
Yeah.
when I joined my first firm in May 2020.
Yeah.
So my first firm was Samagra. It's a governance consulting startup,
Yeah.
and they work with different state governments
Yeah.
they work on designing a lot of their initiatives, and also implementing them while working within government offices.
Yeah.
So my first project was with the government of Haryana. So within
Yeah.
a week of joining, I was staffed on the project, and our mandate was to improve the skilling ecosystem in the state of Haryana. And given the pandemic, of course, everything had changed. There were, of course, unemployment had gone through the roof, and the skills and employment departments that I worked with had to come up with a lot of measures at the time to really solve for the distress that a lot of people, especially the youth in the state, were facing. And Haryana, in fact, is a state which has one of the highest unemployment rates in the country. So that sort of mandate to provide skilling and employment to a very huge chunk of the population in the state, especially during the pandemic, was something that rested with our team at the time. So a lot of my work there, so like I mentioned earlier as well, I worked there out of the government office, and sort of had the opportunity to work with stakeholders across the board. So right from officers in the department to a lot of bureaucrats, and even the technical team. I got the opportunity to work with a lot of them. And a huge focus of my work there was to create this job portal, which was known as the Rozgar portal, to provide employment to this youth of Haryana.
Yeah.
And we did this by onboarding different job platforms and different job aggregators on the platform, who would then reach out to the youth for different job roles. So this particular, so as a consultant there to the government, I sort of had to work on, really sort of scoping out the project, designing the kind of platform that we needed. What will the different features look like? What will the flow of the platform be like? What are the type of jobs that we wish to offer? And there was also a lot of problem solving that had to happen on the go, in terms of, we would often see, for example, that a company would offer, say, 20 job roles. And when those jobs are offered, maybe a lot of people, say out of 20, say 16 of them accept, but then the turnout is pretty poor, like maybe 4 or 5 of them eventually end up joining. So then we also had to solve for this employment funnel, that why do we see this drop off? And there are a lot of interesting insights that came out when we sort of conducted a survey with about 80,000 to 1 lakh youth who were enrolled in a government scheme with the employment department. So we sent out a survey to them to understand what are the reasons. And one major reason that came out there was that over, say, about 60 to 70% of them were preparing for government exams.
Right.
And that is a sole focus for them. And
Right.
they would like to take up a job, but that is not a priority. If they feel
No.
that job is not fitting with their profile or not
Yeah.
something that they want,
Yeah.
they would just forgo it.
Yeah.
So that was one major reason. Another major reason that we saw was that relocation was a huge challenge for people.
Yes.
And this is something that you see across states in India.
Yeah.
That people, if they are in a certain city, they would probably maybe go to the next town, but they would
Not
not
far.
really travel. They would not really
Yeah.
travel far for work. So those were a lot of challenges that we saw at the time. And as a team, we felt that, okay, there is, some gaps in, say, mindset and even career counseling in terms of, just providing the youth that information about the types of jobs that are available in the market. It's not just about, say, a government job. Of course, there's a lot of prestige attached to it. There are a lot of reasons why people go for it. But at the same time, there are a lot of other up and coming opportunities which the youth should try to take up and build the skills for. So again, here with the government, we designed this intervention around career counseling and a whole campaign of sorts, where our sort of mandate there was to, again, try to counsel them, provide them information about the different job opportunities that are there, and also link them to a lot of the employability skills training partners that the government had on board. Because another issue that a lot of the job providers told us about was that a lot of the youth were just not skilled enough, and especially when it came to soft skills. A lot of these jobs that were offered were, say, blue collar jobs or gray collar jobs, where maybe you don't require a lot of communication. But then, say, if you have to work in a call center, which a lot of these jobs were like in that sector, you do require a certain level of communication or a certain way of speaking, which a lot of candidates lacked. So again, the whole endeavor was to create that whole funnel, right from counseling to then skilling them and then linking them to jobs, which I was involved in. That entire piece sort of gave me a very 360-degree view of at least the employment scenario within Haryana, which to some extent can be extrapolated to a lot of other states in India as well, especially in the northern belt. And what are the key sort of challenges that people here in our country face when it comes to employment, when it comes to skilling? So I think that gave me a very good perspective of how things are on the ground. And secondly, I feel that as a consultant, because I was working with a variety of stakeholders, and I had to also, really, be able to communicate with a lot of them. It also helped me work on my own structured communication skills and thought process as well. So I think that sort of gave me a good start into the development sector, gave me an understanding of how things are. About a year into the job, I realized that I want to sort of, again, explore other aspects of the sector and work with other players apart from, say, the government or within the government, who have the players that they are associated with. And that's when I got this opportunity with Deloitte in their social impact practice. And here at Deloitte, a lot of our work is in the M&E, monitoring and evaluation, as well as impact assessment space, where we work with the CSR wings of different corporates and philanthropic foundations in trying to assess the different projects that they run. We also work on certain strategy pieces. And so far, I've worked with the state government of Andhra Pradesh, and I've also worked with one of the with an entrepreneur who was funded by the World Economic Forum and the Deloitte office. So both of these, again, so here I had the opportunity to build a completely different skill set and play a very different role from just from being a consultant who was working on implementation to now being someone who's an evaluator as well. What are the different metrics that you have to assess while say you're evaluating a certain education project or an employment project? So that again was a very different sort of skill set that I had to pick up very quickly, because what I saw here was that I had to work across different sectors with some of my clients. So one of my key clients has a lot of different, over 20, 25 projects across different sectors that they're working on. And as an evaluator, I had to go on the field and assess a lot of these different projects in one go. So that again led to that was a very steep learning curve in terms of, just understanding different models on the ground, and then being able to, evaluate them using using different frameworks that we have as evaluators. Just being able to understand that, and then also speak to, again, a very different set of stakeholders. So here I was speaking to nonprofits, to other, say, grassroots organizations, and also the CSR teams of our clients. So that again gave me giving me a very different perspective of how impact can be brought about through CSR funding and through the different nonprofits that are working on the ground. So yeah, I think that again has been a very enriching experience for me. I've also had the opportunity to go deep into sustainable livelihoods with one of our clients. And that has given me the opportunity to work across different parts of India in trying to understand how what we see right now is that agriculture is not a very aspirational, livelihood, especially among the youth. So one of our clients wants to figure out different ways in which, that shift can be made by providing them with, say, allied sources of income, or even introducing them to something like agri-entrepreneurship. So they're trying to build a lot of those initiatives on the ground, and they want us as evaluators and also as thought partners to help them figure out the ways in which they can now retweak their strategy and help their implementing partners help basically the people on the ground make this transition from agriculture to other sources of income. So I think that in itself, like, just being able to understand different ways in which people approach agriculture across India. There's so much diversity that you see on the ground, which I had the opportunity to see as when I went for a few of these impact assessments. So I've been to Madhya Pradesh, I've been to Tamil Nadu, I've been to Gujarat, and I think each and every place had its own distinct flavor in terms of everything changes, right? In terms of the crops that they grow, in terms of their techniques, in terms of even their aspirations. So you would see in a Gujarat, I think entrepreneurship is something that they're very naturally inclined towards. So over there, I saw that a lot of the women, a lot of tribal women had come together to form FPOs. And a lot of them had also created their own sort of agri-entrepreneurial ventures, where they were using some of the they'd grown a lot of in one particular region. They were growing Karela creepers, bitter gourd creepers. They were selling that, and they'd also prepared pickles or and some other delicacies out of it, and they were selling all of that. So that is something that I saw, which was very interesting in that part of the country. And then in Tamil Nadu, I saw a lot of focus on watershed management as well. How in trying to improve agricultural income, you also have to fix your own you also have to fix the availability of water. So what are the different interventions there which will help improve those outcomes? So again, lots of different models that have been adopted by people on the ground. And again, what we see is a lot of CSR partners are also now willing to explore different ways in which they can provide funding to our implementing partners and see how that shift from just focusing on agriculture to other allied livelihoods can happen. So that has also been a very good learning for me in terms of just trying to see how things work on the ground and how these changes are being made. So that has been a lot of my experience so far in the development sector. Another very interesting thing that I see now, especially in the CSR space, is how there is now a focus on outcomes. They're moving away from just focusing on inputs to more outcome-focused metrics. And so when we work with our clients, they often try to tell us, how they want the implementing partners or the nonprofits that they fund to also take up, different, to also really focus on the outcomes of their project instead of just focusing on things like, say, infrastructure or providing maybe, say, textbooks to students, because that can only lead to so much impact. So how do you shift to a more outcome-focused lens? So where they sort of see us coming in is in trying to help these nonprofits also improve their current ways of collecting and analyzing data, because there are certain gaps that we see even now in the sector. And if we want to move towards a more outcome focused lens, it is important to build those sort of systems, those data backed systems where there is continuous, collection of data on the ground, and all of that data is being stored and then analyzed, and then we're seeing if that intervention is actually creating some kind of positive impact or not. So I see that sort of shift also happening in the sector. And it's very exciting to be working with our clients and also with the implementing partners and nonprofits to sort of help all of us move towards that goal in the sector. So that's also something that has sort of, it is a trend that I see right now in the sector.
Wonderful. Okay. Well, that's I can only say I wish I had so much experience at your age. This is very, very impressive, and the passion in your talk is obvious, and the energy you bring to it is obvious. And I can only wish that I was young enough to be involved in some of these things, because never mind. Okay, it's very impressive, and let's hear your future now.
Sure, sir. So right now I am looking at where I sort of see this is that in the long term, I do see myself getting into social entrepreneurship. I think the reason here is that somewhere I've sort of feel like I gain a lot of satisfaction from trying to do something from scratch and building things. In fact, there was a time last year where I was trying to work on a certain venture which actually focuses on providing mentorship and guidance to people on a variety of topics. So I was trying to build that out. It didn't really take off, but I think the experience in itself was pretty invaluable. And from whatever work that I've seen in the impact space and all the reading that I've done so far, I think that there are still a lot of things that I can work on as an entrepreneur. I would say I still need to maybe flesh out a few aspects of it, but I think that there is a lot of scope in the CSR space itself that I would probably want to work on. I think I do see myself as someone who can set up a CSR advisory firm and really bring out this whole shift that we're seeing now towards sustainability, towards outcomes. I would like to be a part of that and really help out organizations and nonprofits also on that journey. So that is something that's a very long-term vision that I have right now. And in the short term, I want to first build my skills. I want to firstly go back to school. I do have that on the back of my mind right now. I think I'm ready now in terms of what I want to do. Right now, I am focused on going for an MBA. I feel like I want to firstly build a lot of the hard skills that are required to, maybe in terms of how do you run an organization, what are the different things that you have to keep in mind, to really sort of understand the nitty-gritties of it. I feel like an MBA will equip me well with that. And I also believe that right now, again, there is thinking around, maybe is it really something that someone who's worked in the development sector should go for? But in terms of, again, just in terms of talking to people and also basing it on my own strengths, I feel that it will sort of provide me with the platform to, again, really understand my own self, my own skills, and then build out my long-term career of entrepreneurship, because that is something that I am passionate about. So that is what I am right now focused on. Still in the process, so can't really talk about, where I'm going or what I'll be doing. But yeah, at least in the short term, this is where I see myself going.
Well, wonderful. I'm so glad that you talked to us and told us all the excitement that you have had and all the things that you have really accomplished. I'm just so happy to see young people so motivated, so hardworking, so enthusiastic, and seeing the diversity of India, not just sitting in Delhi and spending time on internet, but actually going out in the field. As you said, that's where the reality is. That's where you can see what's happening, and you can't really get it without field visits. I think field visits are very important, and you have pointed it out so eloquently that this is the difference across the different parts of India, and certainly you brought it out well. Okay, wonderful to hear from you. Anything else you want to add at this point?
I think this was mostly what I wanted to share.
Okay.
But also just in terms of, if whoever is sort of probably listening and has listened to this so far, in case in case there's something that you want to know more about the work that I do, or if there's any kind of help that you need, or even mentorship, I'm always available. I always enjoy speaking to people and trying to help them figure out things, even though of course I'm not saying that I have figured out everything, but I always am open to helping out or doing my bit for everyone. So I would just like to maybe end it.
All right, Sukanya, that's great. Maybe we'll catch up with you in 1 year to see, how your mind has settled. Okay. Right now, there's a lot of options and a lot of thinking, some uncertainty and some promise. But let's see how you settle down in perhaps 1 year, and come back and ask you to tell us at that point how you made your decisions, or you didn't make decisions, whatever it is that happened. I think it'll be also helpful for younger people to know how their seniors are going through something, and just their own decision making or lack of decision making, comfort zone, lack of comfort zone, whatever it is that you have. I think it'll be very good. So let's say bye to the viewers now, and I'll be back with another young person or an expert soon. Till then, bye.
Bye. Thank you. Thank you.